Good morning and welcome to our Finance and Performance meeting. If I can get people to take their seats, and I'll open the meeting. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia ma kina kina ki uta, kia ma tara tara ki tai. E hiake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hohu. Tihei moriora. So we'll start with item 1, apologies, and I've got an apology from Councillor Major for absence, which is moved by Sam and seconded by Jimmy Chen. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, that's carried. Declarations of interest. We obviously have a number of councillors who sit as directors on the boards of various organisations that we're considering draft statements of intent today. So that's CCHL, Christchurch NZ and Venues Otatahi. So those are noted. I'm not aware of any other declarations of interest for the meeting today, but if anything does come up as we move through the agenda, please let it be known. Item 3, confirmation of previous minutes. I'm happy to move those previous minutes. Do I have a seconder? James Daniels. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, that's carried. And then we've got 2 supplementary reports that we need to include in today's agenda. So item 19, the resolution to include the supplementary reports in the meeting. I'm happy to move that we do so. Jake McClellan will second. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, that's carried. So then moving to item 4, public forum. No public forum items today. Item 5, deputations. No deputations today. Item 6, presentation of petitions. No petitions today. So then moving to item 7, the performance exceptions report. Now, Peter, I'll get you to make some introductory remarks in just a moment. But first to say that this is the first time that we've seen this report updated with the recent results from the resident satisfaction survey and the point of contact survey. Now, both of those surveys are going to be reported in a formal sense to Council at the Council meeting on the 13th of May. That will be the opportunity for any detailed questions on those surveys, the survey methodology, the survey results, and any of the trends and so on that those are showing. So anything that's specifically about the surveys or the survey results, those questions would be rightly directed to that meeting, the 13th of May. However, today would be the appropriate time to raise any questions around performance exceptions, including those that have been updated by the survey results. But anything about the survey specifically, we'll be referring to the Council meeting on the 13th of May when the report on those surveys comes in front of Council. So with that said, Peter, welcome to the table, and I'd welcome any introductory remarks that you've got on this report.
Thank you and good morning. Just to clarify the purpose of this report again, it's to report high-level results against performance goals. The more detailed analysis follows in the finance and project management reports. The top line of service delivery is that it's stable. It has been since basically October last year. We're sitting at about 82.5% of levels of service successfully delivered out of looking for about 85. Now, the show's not over. That's only a couple that could take us to success. And there are some that are hanging in the balance, so we may end up at 85 yet. These results, as the Chair has noted, contain the resident survey results across a whole raft of levels of service. The bottom line of that is that those that went the wrong way are netted off by those that went the right way, and there's been a negligible effect overall on the overall result. Obviously, every year there are a certain percentage where there's a decline, there's a certain percentage where there's an increase, and basically they net out this year. It's also worth noting that there are some levels of service that are still affected by COVID. Obviously, attendance and visits at things like the art gallery are going to be affected by the lack of international visitors. So the positive there is, you may note if you look at previous years, the volatility involved. The forecasting this year is spot on. The managers are really on top of what they're doing. Their forecasts have proven to be very, very accurate. to the point where even the resident survey, which is a somewhat subjective feedback from the public, their forecasts have been accurate there as well. So it's good to see that we've got a tight, reliable forecast to put in front of you. Non-LTP levels of service, which are more detailed and management oriented, are actually quite a lot higher than this. So that's just a piece of context. Moving on to the watch list capital projects, you'll get a more detailed report, but overall we're looking at 80% for a target of 90 on major watch list projects. Bearing in mind that that's a view of the watch list based on whole of life, not just the current year. You'll get details of specific exceptions, project exceptions in Ruth's report to follow. The highlights are pointed out there and any changes from the original baseline in the LTP. So for both, in short, for both watchlist projects and levels of service, we're running close to target. We still have almost a quarter of a year left. So it's hard to predict exactly where it will end, but this will be reasonably close to where it will end. Following that, there are some management comments on levels of service exceptions, supplying actuals, remedial actions, and any commentary. The quality of those comments we're working on with the managers to make sure you get the right information in front of you. There are very few surprises in there. They're consistent with previous months. If there are questions on any of those, I'll attempt to answer them, or the manager can answer them if they're present, or we can, if they're detailed questions, we can take them away and report back to you, which was a protocol set up in previous meetings.
Thank you. And I mean, it's interesting what causes a project to go red. We've got St Albans Community Centre pushed back by 12 days. In the grand scheme of things, minimal, but that causes that to be shown as an exception. So, I mean, that's just one example of how a very small change can result in something showing up in this report.
Yes.
All right, so Peter, thanks for the introduction. Happy to take any questions on this. Are there questions on this report? No questions? All right, in which case I'm happy to move that we receive the information provided in the report. Jimmy will second. All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
So item 8, the capital projects performance report. Ruth, welcome to the table. Thank you. And again, if we can take any headline or introductory comments before we move to questions. And again, noting that you've got heads of service available, you've got appropriate managers available to be talking to their areas and also answer any questions on their particular areas as well.
Cool, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So the report in front of you, status is at March this year. There is an update on the slide in front of you, also available on the hub, that shows our April status. Just bearing in mind that all April actuals are not yet in. So focusing on our core program, up there on the left-hand side, on the top left, all of council, we are forecasting a delivery of 358.4 against the 376.8. That would give us a result of 95% spend against budget, or a carry forward of 18.4 million. So you can see also the breakdown by our key delivery units also to indicate what they are forecasting to deliver against their core program. Our above-the-line projects at the bottom left there, Parakiori and CMUA, as you know, these are delivered by third parties. The forecasts that we receive are reflected directly in our system from them, so we have no influence on those forecasts. Spend to date, so an update on the March spend, because at the time of writing within the report it noted that spend was at 94%. Delivery units achieved 97% to the end of March. And as of today, with April not yet closing, delivery units have spent 82% of their forecasted spend. So that would bring us a total spend to date of 306 across all of capital, or 2.8.9 against the core program. So in our final months, just a reminder that June is a double month of spend, so we accrue all June costs within June so that they're captured in the financial year that the work has been completed. So that means we have 3 months of spend remaining. So we have $109 million forecast for spend left on our core program. So I'll be asking the delivery units to come up one at a time to speak to their forecasts remaining. For your reference, in the papers that you have, refer to pages 44 and 46, showing the breakdown of each month. They'll be speaking to that. And you'll also note that in those slides this month, you can see the change from their previous month forecast. So firstly, transport, so they're forecasting a remaining spend of $43 million, and last year they spent $37 million in May and June. Lynette can talk today. You have a voice.
I have a voice this month, thank you. Morning, everyone. So as last month, we have a number of large projects under contract and under construction. There's a number of cycleway contracts out there on South Express, Norwest Arc, Heathcote, Rapanui 3 that are underway and working. We are looking to get a couple of small bits of Northern Line off the Kiwi Rail corridor started, so they're being worked on at the moment as well. There is more that has been contracted. Cashmere Hoonhay Wesley's has been tendered. I'm going to a tender session later this morning about Coastal Pathway, so there's a lot more work under contract than we were in the same position last year. So that's why we have the confidence of spend.
Next, Three Waters, so they're forecasting a remaining spend of $52 million. Last financial year, Three Waters spent $30 million in May and June. Tell it.
Hello everyone, my name is Talat. Last year we were forecasting and achieved less because our curve was front loaded. We had lots of construction projects which were tapering down from last year, but this time we have done all the hard work and we have done all the procurements, and the projects are coming into construction every week, every month. So that's why we are forecasting more, 52 million in the last month. And most of them are from the reticulation projects, big reticulation projects, which are 35 in numbers. And in next month, they all will be in construction. So it's easy spend, which will come from the contractors' progress payments.
Cool.
Thank
Do
you.
you have any particular question?
I will do it at the end.
We'll come to questions altogether at the end, but thank you very
And then
much.
finally, Darren with the community forecasting a spend of $5 million. Last year, they also spent $5 million.
Kia ora koutou katoa. I've got to shift $5 million in the next 3 months, imminently achievable. It's a portfolio of 143 projects from the ground up. That's the community portfolio. The $5 million aggregates around about half a dozen projects. Final accounts on St Albans Community Centre, the Edmund Band Rotunda. We're doing $1 million worth of hard surface paving in the Botanic Gardens at the moment. That'll be cleared by the end of the financial year. And some significant work at the Pioneer Pool, so I can see where the money's going to come, and with the reforecast there, imminently achievable in the time to run.
Thank you.
Thanks. And then finally, major facilities. We don't have Alistair in the room at the moment.
Behind
She's
you.
right here.
Hi, Alistair. Welcome.
Clearly your timing was perfect.
So $31.4 million forecast for the next few months.
Yep. So the issues that we've had are obviously with regard to Metro Sports facility itself and also the CMUA. Metro Sports is forecasting some. The forecast is based on their productivity. We are presented the figures and we input the figures according to the project delivery team, being CPB and Otakaro. We know that there are some substantial sums to be met, and they're looking highly unlikely that they'll meet those, with the June figure being 10.4 million at the moment, which is an unknown really in the Christchurch market, but we'll see if they get there eventually. The second part would be CMUA, and we all know that CMUA, B6 Wattpac have been appointed. With them being appointed, we're now starting to see a forecast come from them, and we've started geotech work, and we're deep into the design teams at the moment, and we're expecting the first invoice, which will be around about 2.5 million. So we're starting to see the forecast come to light and the spend profile being met. So, and we expect that to be the same for the next 12 months. So confident with that.
Cool. I'll just call out a couple more things and then go to questions. So the watch list report, page 62, our Churm Street Brick Barrel project had practical completion in April. There's just some final resurfacing works to be completed this week. And then the external funded report, page 65, our Norwest Arc cycle routes, section 1A, 1B and 1C are also now complete. I'll take any questions. Potentially with the major facilities, I'd recommend that any specific questions relating to those portfolios be taken later in the agenda. We've got the update from Alistair later on.
Great, thank you. So ready to take questions now? Pauline.
Yep. Thanks, Ruth. Just on page 42, when we talk about the Three Waters, and there's actual savings there of 10 million because of what does it say? Oh, just various reasons, competitive low prices, conforming tenders. Now, underneath that, it looks at purchasing land for stormwater activity and future-proofing that. Is that intended to come out of the 10 million, or is that stormwater land purchases already budgeted for, leaving us with a real surplus?
Yeah, the latter. So the land purchase is already part of the forecast. So Three Waters are currently looking for opportunities to accelerate projects to bring them back to fill in that 9.4 million.
Great, that's good news. Thank you.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, Dawn, certainly.
So unusually, you'll hear me say this, Pauline, is that for once it's a good thing that we have 9 million, because actually we're getting sharper prices. Yeah. And that's a good thing, means we can be recycling the money into elsewhere.
Thank you. Jimmy.
Oh yes, you mean this item classification or just specific pages? I just want to know this item.
Sorry to understand.
On page 61.
Oh, 61.
The first update status regarding to the full material purchase from overseas, the postal junction road extension, whether will impact those delivery date in May of 2022.
There's no comments in the report. It's all green.
So yes, it's all green.
Hello?
It's all green. It's all going for May 22.
We received already.
Received what? Sorry?
Purchase material from Australia and Italy.
We're not purchasing that material. Kerry Rail are purchasing that material.
Yes.
But we are looking to go to tender soon, is my understanding.
So Hallswell
this
Junction
is
Road extension is showing as
It's
green.
showing green on track. Yes.
So, but my understanding, they have a full material purchase from the overseas, to Australia, to from Italy, a period of time. I just want to know update status.
Our project manager is working with Kerry Rail to understand that and is reporting in this report that things are on track to meet the requirements and to meet these timeframes.
Okay. Second is the page 63. What's update status, multicultural recreation and the community center? Those one. This is green, but I'm not sure whether have any progress or not.
It's being investigated in Scotland.
There's, so what was the question, Jimmy? Sorry, I
My
was...
question, update status regarding
Yeah, so
to
it's,
this one.
the progress at the moment is it sits with the governance team at the moment because they're still working through and negotiating the next steps, if you will. So we were allocated the project to look at what we could do across with the property itself, and then what we could do across the portfolio, and see where we could slot changes needing to be made into the play. That's now gone back to John Phil Selver with regards to the next steps from a governance perspective. So that's the update that I can give you. The money's still in play. We're just not spending any of that money at all at the moment.
Yeah, but in here, you know, your signal still green. In my view, is a little bit uncertainty should be the
No, there's no uncertainty.
from green
It's,
to the
it's
amber.
about it's no uncertainty. It's about consultation. That's all. So it's just the next steps. We're just going through a process. John's leading that process, and I'll get John to give you an update.
Okay.
Okay.
Last question. Yep. Okay. On page 67, the Crown Regeneration Acceleration Fund, CRAF for $40 million. I'm not sure, except these 5 projects, total investigate for 10 million, have any the projects in relation to the southwest area, particular Hoswell and the Hornby area, because those traffic, congestion is quite serious. I'm not sure whether have any the project in relation to.
So the CREF money
Yeah,
is
yeah,
the
yeah, 40
regeneration
million.
money, the 40 million, and
Yes.
that was all reported to council. And there's 5 geographic areas and money for safety projects and PT projects. The geographic areas, there's a Horswell, no, there's a Riccarton geographic area that is covered with the works, and that's underway as per everything we've discussed previously.
Yeah, but my concern, but how about the Hoswell and the Hornby area, those the traffic one?
This has all been agreed.
Have any overall the review?
This has all been agreed previously.
So there were
By you
previous
as
decisions of council
Yeah.
On those
which
areas.
determined the priority areas. So staff are obviously then working on projects within the areas that we previously as governors decided would be the priority areas.
And then was put into the business case, which
Yes.
was submitted to central government, which is what they have signed off, and therefore we need to deliver in the areas that have been agreed.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Yeah.
Thank you. Just on page 60, right at the top, we've got the Naval Point Development Plan, where they said the original delivery date was June 2015, but I don't know if that's a typo or, and then it's got the approved delivery date January 2027. But given that we've got the sale GP and we've made a sort of commitment to do stuff, does that need to be updated or have a separate section just so we can have confidence that the facilities will be ready in time?
The adopted master plan is envisaged to be delivered over that period of time, over that 10-year time frame or thereabouts. The piece of work we're doing now, the carve out to create the car park to allow the Sale GP event to take place, is moving at pace, and we'll have that complete by Christmas. The date for the total project completion, I think, sounds about right, 6 to 7 years out. What was the
2027.
27.
27? Look, I'll have a look at that for next time, but it's certainly that's the way the money's sequenced in the LTP, that we'll be delivering components of the master plan over a long period of time.
Okay.
So remembering this is by exception, clearly it's important that I think it's right that you could just comment on the critical piece in relation to what needs to be done this year.
Oh, yeah.
And if there is, and we ask that that be done, but that only be done if there is an exception issue that isn't being delivered. If it's green and it's fine, then it will be silent on it, because that's the point of the
my
reporting.
understanding from the last briefing we had, there was an exception issue that we needed to think about.
Well, that's not coming through in this report, so
No.
there you are. That's the officer telling you.
We have budget and the LTP proposed to be able to deliver upon that master plan, so that's what we've worked towards. The LTP bid, based on the QS costings, and able to deliver everything that came through for approval in the Naval Point Development Plan, is currently proposed within the 10-year LTP at 27 million, I think was the number.
Right, okay.
But councillor is concerned, quite rightly, to make sure that we deliver in this first year, specifically to the agreement that we have.
Yeah, so my understanding was we came back and did some sort of substitution to find the additional funding that was required, that there were different options of things that we could do, different choices that we had based on the requirements, and more work had been going into detailed design.
I might let Andrew talk to that, as it's his budget that we're delivering on behalf of Andrew.
But the key thing, I mean, just in terms of the
so
key concern
you'll
is
recall that
get
we presented
ready.
to council a more it's been through a bit of a process. There was the bid deadline that needed to be met, and there were some early numbers that were put in front of council. Subsequent to that, we came back with some more detailed numbers, and there was an increase in budget required to deliver the component that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And at that time, we discussed options on how we could slide money effectively to end up with the same net balance for the LTP and have no impact on the LTP across other projects. So that position hasn't changed.
Right.
And as Darren has pointed out, yes, there's lots going on in terms of negotiating how to move the project forward, but it's on track. There's no exception to report at this point in time.
Okay. And I think the other thing, I mean, obviously we're keen to get the work done that needs to be done as a minimum, but I think we also gave direction if there was opportunities to do more in a shorter time frame that we would look at.
If you're referring to in regard to Sale GP event,
yeah, I mean just having the
there
place
simply won't be you won't have time to add elements that are not critical to that event.
Yeah.
But we're absolutely looking at efficiencies in terms of, you know, we're opening up the ground. If it needs to go in now to support the long term, that's happening.
Great. Okay. Just the other question I had was in regards to the Cycleway project. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the page. It's listed as red. It's the Tannery to Martindales. Sorry, the page 64. So just trying to kind of understand. Obviously, there's additional funding that's needed. But when are we likely to see the detailed design? I know we've lodged the consent. Have we got the consent approved, or what's kind of happening there?
We don't need consent for all of it.
Right.
We need consent for parts of it. Some of the consents are in, and some of the approvals for working in for easements and others are in. So some of the work can go ahead. Others, it's all being worked in parallel. It is still showing I haven't got it on my. Bruce got it on the list. It is still showing an overspend. The team and the construction crews are working to pull that back as much as they can. It was higher than that a couple of months ago. So we are still working on that before we come back and report back to you and ask to utilise the contingency that is the program level contingency that is sitting there. So we're trying to do everything they can to pull that back and be more certainty on their costs before we come and ask to use other funds.
So do we know what the changes are that Kiwi Rail have required? Is that typical to all the other crossings as well?
Yeah. It is around gates usually.
Okay.
It's usually around pedestrian gates for the crossings.
Right. And just
and signals.
the final question on that project, that says the cost associated with Kamana Terrace being two-way. Has that decision been made?
Well, effectively the decision, there is still a report that has to come back to the community board, but effectively the decision was made. We were asked to go out and reconsult. The clarity on that reconsultation has shown to stick with the original decision to keep it two-way.
Okay, so but we're going to get a report back with that result?
It won't be a decision report, it'll be an information report, yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Are there any further questions on this report? Mike.
Thank you. Just one thing, two parts to it. It's good to see that the level crossings, rail crossings have been separated, but there's no actual time frame in this. I assume that's still late 22?
Yes.
And that's obviously the full upgrade.
The end of all of them, yeah.
Sorry, what's that?
The end of all of them, yeah.
Do we have a time frame for the interim solution? Obviously, it's quite a busy road at the moment.
I went digging for that yesterday and I couldn't get that information, so I'll have to come back to you on that one separately.
Thank you. Any further questions? So I'm happy to move the receipt of this report. Do I have a seconder? Sam MacDonald. Is there any debate? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? That's carried. Thank you. Now moving to item 9, the corporate finance report, and we've got Bruce for this one. Bruce, welcome to the table. We'll take the report as read. Are there any introductory remarks that you'd like to make?
Yes, good morning, councillors. There's nothing significant to see in this report in terms of Treasury. All positions are within policy limits. We've got $132 million due for repayment next month, which we've already pre-funded in September, October, so we have the funds on hand to do that. In terms of general debt, there was an increase, but it was largely due to billing the Crown for the next instalment of the multi-use arena, which has been paid in April. In terms of rates debt, there's been a continuing decline in rates debt, down to 19.7 million at the moment. 2 million of that is prior year's arrears. The balance of 17.7 is current year's arrears. So that's trending in the right direction as well. That's about all I've got to say. If there's any questions, happy to take them.
Yep, all good. Thank you for that. Are there any questions on this report? All right, so so Sam, you're happy to move. Do we have a seconder?
Okay.
Jimmy?
Yeah.
All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. And Bruce, staying with you for item 10, the financial performance report for the 9 months ended 31st March. Any commentary on this one?
Yes. In December, we reported to you a optimistic forecast position for operating result of 6.2 million. That has steadily improved over the last quarter, month on month. We're currently looking at a significant surplus of 19.1 million. In fact, I've just seen the April forecast is 22.1 million. So there's been we're looking potentially at a very good financial position this year in terms of OPEX. It's driven by a number of things. Some of it is COVID related. Some of it relates to us being slightly conservative in our budgeting because of COVID. That looks at things like facilities revenue, where we were slightly conservative, and the revenue has been better than we expected. Subvention credits, we didn't expect any this year or the next 2 years. We've re-looked at that, and we received a 2.2 million subvention credit last month, and we're expecting that in the future as well, so that's a positive. You know about the CCHL dividend. Parking revenue is probably the one detractor that is down slightly inner city parking. Outside of COVID, there's things like consenting volumes,
really high,
where we predicted a slowdown in consenting due to a supposed recession. In fact, our consenting revenues and associated expenses are significantly higher than we expected. There was the extension of the Burwood landfill, which has generated additional revenue, partly offset by some costs. At the same time, we've had quite a tight control on our costs. In fact, our costs are forecast to be slightly under budget this year. They've been well managed. There are some costs, as I mentioned, that are up around consenting and Burwood landfill. There were some savings in the recycling and organics area around the way, in terms of volumes being down and the way those were handled. As I say, very good forecast financial position, and that will have a positive impact potentially on next year's rates in terms of the LTP. In terms of CapEx, I won't go into that in any detail given the report you've had from Ruth. So I'm open to questions.
Excellent. I mean, I think the key message is that this is a good news story, that 22.1 million surplus, as noted in paragraph 4.3 of the report, will go to debt reduction is greater than the residual COVID debt that was planned to be drawn down in the next financial year, which means that there won't be a need to draw down any further COVID debt. That obviously has a flow-on effect to the rates in year one of the LTP, which is very positive. So there's a lot of what you've just told us that, very positive information and does reflect good news, both in this report, but more particularly for year one of the LTP and the rates impact. So thank you for being the bearer of good tidings. Moving to questions. Are there questions on this report? Sam?
Just a quick one. Thanks, Bruce, and I agree, it's good news. The only thing was in 4.3, the interest expense overstatement in the draft LTP. So is that currently in the draft that's out for consultation? Or?
That should actually read an interest overstatement in the annual plan.
Yeah,
in the current year's annual plan.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So that's not in. So we're not like we've already. What I was hoping was we'd get to the LTP and we've got more saving.
No, sorry, the figures in the LTP are correct. They will improve slightly with the reduction in COVID borrowing, of course.
Okay, cool. Damn, I thought we'd found another 3 million.
Thank you. Yanni?
While I appreciate this is good news in terms of the budget, I guess the two areas that I'm concerned about is the fact that we're underspent in water maintenance of $2 million. This is on 5.4, and 5.3 roading and footpaths timing of maintenance. So two of the kind of key things that we're really concerned about, and we're underspent. So given what we're discovering with some of the water issues that we've had, how can we be in a position not to have spent the water maintenance budgets?
I was hoping Helen was still here.
Okay.
It might be a question that if we haven't got somebody in the room who can answer it now, we need to take offline and provide information by email.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to get information. I just would have thought at a higher level, though, where we've got huge dissatisfaction with footpaths. We've just had the report that shows, a huge number of complaints around the condition. And Denton, which I haven't seen the sort of closeout report, what happened at Denton, but also we know what happened in Akaroa. We have seen that report around, things not being done because of budgets, and yet we're underspent. So I guess I was just really interested in that high level. How does something like that happen? And is the systems in place so that we do spend that budget to ensure that we can address those priorities?
And I think there are, things that we'd probably expected to be addressed within Yanni's question. Doesn't underspend necessarily mean that the work hasn't been done, or does it mean the work has been done but it's cost less? But then if we've got a surplus, are there other projects that we could be bringing back to use that surplus if we're in a constrained environment where there's work that we naturally would be choosing to do if it was affordable? So if we can pick that type of thinking up in the written response back, that would be helpful. Because an underspend doesn't necessarily mean that the work hasn't been done. It may be that it has been done, but more cost effectively.
So I would add to that, Chair, is that actually in the finance report where we have those things that Councillor Johansson is right in terms of questioning, and he did this last time as well, is that there is a specific comment in the finance report over something that might be perceived as not a good thing. So what are the facts around it? Either that actually we've got better pricing or whatever it might be, or we don't have enough staff, or whatever the result is. Put it in the report so that he doesn't have to keep asking the question.
Yeah. Great.
Just the other thing, I mean, just in the revenue, really good to see the Hepuna Taimoana, and I think we've had have we had some information back on how that's performing? I think we have, haven't we, around what we were expecting. But the Rec and Sport revenues, I didn't quite understand what it meant by due to the release of revenues from the balance sheet. What, is that just an accounting kind of?
Yeah, effectively it is. It's revenue that we've received in prior years that we haven't recognised.
Right.
So it's being released from the balance sheet. I'd have to look at the reason for that.
What page is that on, Yanni?
That's on page 91. Thank you.
I can answer that. It's to do with consenting, and we hold the revenue there's always a slight delay between when it's received and when it's released because of issues around consenting and whether refunds have to be paid. And there was just this year that prior year's revenue was released. That's what that relates to.
Oh, right, with COVID and memberships and things
Well,
like
not
that.
necessarily COVID, it's just a normal delay, but it's because if we release it all at once, there's chances are, if we have to issue credits, there's a small refund.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. No more questions? James?
Kia ora, Bruce. Look, I'm not, just because it's been raised, I just want you to confirm regarding He Puna Taimoana, the hot pools, I understood, and as I say, I haven't had a look in here, I understood that they're in profit, they're forecasting a profit for the year, whereas they were budgeting for a loss of something like 700. Is that right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't catch the first part of the question.
Maybe if you could repeat the question, James.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just wanting to confirm, it was raised about He Puna Taimoana, the hot pools in New Brighton, and whether or not what was happening with it financially. I understand that it's in profit when it was budgeted to make a loss of something like $700,000. Is that right?
Yeah, I haven't got I can't answer that question in detail. Sorry.
Again, that might be one that we'll answer offline by way of an email, but certainly in the report, paragraph 5.2, 1, 2, 3, fourth bullet point, is showing higher revenues of 0.6 million. So that's there in the report, but it will be good to see how that's tracking against forecast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we can get that information again just emailed around, that would be perfect.
So it's absolutely outperforming its forecast, but whether it washes its face is a different issue.
Yeah. So outperforming forecast, is it enough to bring it into surplus, or does it still mean it's operating at a deficit? Yeah, let's get that offline.
It was more of a statement than a question, actually.
Okay. Yeah, Aaron.
Yeah, the lower revenue from parking, what's that down to?
What's it? Sorry.
Why is the revenue on parking down?
My understanding it's volume.
Yeah, it was
simply volume related. On and off street parking revenue is lower than budgeted. I'd have to get the business to answer any more detail than that.
Right.
That's correct. We've had lower than expected revenue because fewer people have been parking.
So fewer parking, or we have fewer car parks?
Yes, we've had lower than expected.
So it's occupancy. So this is driven by occupancy of the car parks that we've got that were the basis of the forecast, not because there are less car parks available for use.
Yes. It's a combination of the car parks and on street, but overall it's below what we were forecasting.
Yep, that's clear.
Right. So would that be suggesting we're charging too much to park and that's why people are not using them? Do we look into that at some point?
Okay, so...
It'll change what when young people start driving?
No,
So I don't know whether there would be any information available as to what's driving that particular outcome. It's something that might be relevant to considerations. I mean, car park charges form part of the LTP, so maybe it might be worth anticipating that this would come up as part of an LTP conversation.
Yeah, because, Mr Chair, something I've raised each time we've removed on-street car parking is that it doesn't trigger a financial implication, which is a little bit alarming, that you'd take away an asset that returns you several $1,000s a year, but that doesn't count as a financial implication, where I believe it should.
Okay, so
and that could be it, but it might not be. So it'll be good to know, because Mike might be right. Maybe the buses are full. And
so
and
we seem to have moved
busy.
well beyond questions at this point, but I think, the point's made. And yeah, it will be interesting to know what it is that's driving that. I mean, what you're talking about is how the forecasting might have changed as a result of the number of car parks available. What we're talking about here is the uptake and the revenue from those car parks which are available been lower than expected because of less use than expected. Two different matters, but both of which are capable of being picked up as part of the LTP. Okay. Any other questions? Jimmy?
Maybe this is a silly question, but I still would like to ask a start. If we review the two pie chart, I'm just concerned, for instance, looks like if we contribute more capital expenditure, then we probably will be reduced big amount of the operation expenditure. For instance, like three waters, wastewater, water supply, stormwater. Capital one, we contribute 12%, 7%, 3%, then we spend a lot for operating cost. However, the roading and the footpath, we contribute for 23%. Then those operation expenditure only spend for 16%. And also the transportation, capital expenditure 8%. Then operation expenditure is 3%. So I just don't know what's the rationale. Those one, these two pie charts.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pie charts are just trying to give you an idea of where the spend is occurring for OPEX and CAPEX, and to some extent, they don't change a lot. It takes a lot to change them in terms of, a lot of money needs to either be not spent or additional spend to actually change that pie chart much. And I think to some degree they just are what they are. And they reflect, the budget decisions you've made and the spend decisions.
So, Jimmy, this is simply reporting back on the
I
situation.
know, because I'm concerned, for instance, roading and the footpath, actually, it's those percentage relative is low. Whether it's still can have a good quality of maintenance.
So I think what you're talking about is a discussion that's more relevant for the LTP than this report back that we've got today. The balance between capital expenditure and the need for maintenance and where we choose to spend our capital area by area, they would all be matters for the LTP rather than for this report today. Okay. This is simply reporting back on budgets that we've previously put in place. If we felt that those budgets should be put in place differently, then that would be a matter for the long-term plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, now I'm happy to move receipt of this information. Do I have a seconder for that? James Goff. All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. So now moving on to item 11, the Asset Performance and Condition Report. So Piers, welcome to the table. Now we've got two reports, items 11 and 12. We'll take both of them as read. We'll deal with them one at a time, obviously. Yeah, certainly happy to receive any commentary that you have on item 11, and then we'll move to questions.
Great, thank you. Good morning, councillors. I've got a couple of slides here. I'm just going to step you through it. I appreciate that the condition and performance report that you've received is a fairly meaty tome in and of itself. I think it was about 60 pages of detail. So I'll try and nip through what we've got on here at the moment. Previously, you've received 4 independent reports, and for this particular committee, there was a question asked, can we bring this together into a single report? Now, these reports gave you some indication of what the value and condition of our assets were, and obviously you've had a number of reports prior with shifts in the Three Waters valuations, and a lot of this work has been focused on helping to understand where the gaps are in the information for areas such as valuation. Importantly enough, we're now moving into performance-based information as well, and that's a big maturity step for councils as a whole, and particularly this council as we start looking at that. And I've displayed a number of projects to you over the previous years that are beginning to drive that question of how are our assets performing. So I think importantly, about 63% of those metrics that you've looked at in that report have shown improvement in one way or the other. And that's giving us better confidence in the planning capability that we have for processes like our long-term plan. What information do we have, and how does that underpin where we invest? Of particular interest for me has been the transport area and making sure that the assets related in that report are coming up. And we've had NZTA technical and procedural report that's come through, and they're very pleased with the shift in information that we hold about our roading and path assets in that space. Parks, once again, there's been a really significant push from the teams to get into much more levels of detail around information about their particular asset base. There were some gaps, previous reports around some health and safety aspects, things like safety rails, and the teams really doubled down in that area to make sure that information's in place. I guess it's not all roses. I think the challenges that we have found in doing this particular report, which has taken a couple of my team many months to actually pull this together, we still have challenges around information to do with our pump station network and our treatment plants. And that's becoming a particular focus for the teams, given the valuation space that we had in the Three Waters area. We had a $3.87 billion jump in our asset valuation last time round. A lot of reasons for that, one of which, not the majority factor of it, was asset-related information. Mm-hmm. So we know there's some gaps there. This report and bringing this report to this committee helps the teams keep focused on understanding where those gaps are sitting. We've got as I've alluded to, we've had a number of projects that have been driving planning type capability for the LTP. You'll hear me use this four-letter acronym, the AAIF project, the planning tool that we use for reticulation. I did a presentation to that a number of months ago. It's those sort of projects that help us understand where the gaps are in the data. And that's been really important in understanding how that data is used to deliver and de-risk investment scenarios that the staff put together for you. Council are closing those gaps, which we talked about, and this helps us understand where those gaps are. And we're now beginning to understand where performance is. So if you have if you remember back, there's an A3 sheet that sat in front of that report with a number of areas that we're focused on. In particular, you can see that there are gaps within performance. And that's really, not a lot of councils are in that headspace about how are our assets performing. And it goes back to that simple analogy. We might replace a roof on a building. We might replace a pipe. And we will give that a condition of 1. It's brand new, it's shiny. But actually, if the roof leaks, is it giving us the level of performance that our communities expect from it? And so it's that performance and how the data is being used to derive that information that really helps us understand, are we actually looking after the assets in the best way? So we're on that journey. 19 to 21, we've been developing these reports. The next steps for us are automating it. As I said, it was a huge amount of effort for the team to bring these reports to you. And we're now in the process of automating it. Should get to a point where it's almost push a button and here's the report. So we've still got a journey to go in that, and this little slide here helps us understand where we're actually going. And ultimately, we're now beginning to focus on the LTP for 2024. What are the improvements and where are the gaps to make sure we de-risk the investment? Okay, on to the 6-monthly report. Unless there are any questions, sorry, Councillor Turner, do you want to go to questions on this? Or?
Yeah, let's deal with them one item at a time. So we'll deal with item 11 first, and then we'll come to item 12 separately.
Sure. So
this has obviously taken some time to get to this point, but it's good that we're now here and clearly significant progress has been made. We had previously expressed some concerns that there was an asymmetry of activity, particularly between transport and waters. You've called out a number of issues with some of the water assets. Am I right in thinking that the Three Waters area is one area where you'll be putting specific information with the intention of bringing that asset data up to the same level that we've got the transport asset data?
Correct. That is exactly what we're doing. So as we start understanding where the gaps are and what the implications of those gaps, we have to make a decision. Do we spend time, effort and resource on fixing our laterals data that we've got? No, because that doesn't figure hugely in the investment, and it's actually a relatively small component of the overall asset base. However, our wastewater treatment plant and the understanding of our asset base within that's a critical asset that we need to spend more time on, and us understanding how that breakdown occurs allows my team to focus in that area.
And when do you think we would get to a point where we've got a similar level of data on water assets as we currently do on transport assets?
Well, a lot of the Three Waters reform is driving the imperative to understand how that data is being used. In answer to your question, timeline, I would expect over the next 6 to 8 months that the pump station environment, we should understand the detail behind that gap, and that then becomes a process of filling in the mortar between the brickwork, I guess is probably a metaphor to use. For our wastewater treatment plant, I'm at the very early stages of trying to understand the unknowns in that space. Diane Branch and I have had a couple of conversations around the next potential valuation that we need to do. So, you know, it's that valuation work that helps drive what is the information that we hold about our assets.
Yeah, and then final question from me. You're proposing to bring this report to us next in April next year. I'm assuming that means that you're intending bringing this report annually rather than 6 monthly from this point onwards?
As far as the programme or the condition and performance report?
The performance and condition report, we've got item 3, approve the timing for the next asset condition and performance report to be submitted to finance performance in April 2023. So that's a year away.
Yeah.
Obviously, this has been coming 6 monthly. Given the concerns around needing to bring the water data up to the same level as transport data and the concern around filling gaps, and given the comment that you made around with the work that's been done, this should very soon be as simple as just pushing a button to get the report. Why would you be proposing to bring this annually rather than 6 monthly? I realise, you know, the alignment with LTP preparation is one part of the answer, but if it's easy to bring it 6 monthly and there's work going on that would be reporting 6 monthly, why would you be proposing to bring it annually?
I think it's just the number of reports that you have to receive is the main aspect, and it brings us into the correct cycle. So the process of bringing a report to you and the effort that has been required, that's one element of it, but it's also ensuring that the shift in or the change in that data set, is that actually materially relevant? If these numbers change within 1% of each other, there's not a lot of point of bringing the report at this level of regularity.
Okay, now my mental arithmetic has let me down. 2023 is 2 years away, not 1 year away. You wouldn't consider bringing something to us at least in a year's time as an interim update?
If you would prefer to receive it yearly, then that's something that we can do. Happy to do that. What we could do to lessen the paper burden is to do it in more of an exception report, to say we will bring you the changes that have occurred, or the significant changes, of which I would suggest that pump stations and the wastewater treatment plant might be an area that you want to understand a little bit more detail, and we may have that detail by that point.
Okay, so that would then see us bringing an exceptions report in April 22, and the next version we'd see this full report would be in April 23 as part of that early stage of LTP 2024 development.
Yeah, because I think fundamentally having this report prior to an LTP process helps council understand, do we have the right information underpinning the investment scenarios, and therefore the question that if I was a councillor that I would be asking me would typically be, do we have the capability to use that information to understand where we invest? And that's the space that the team are trying to operate in.
So I think all of that speaks to that interim exceptions report being brought in a year's time in April 22, and then the full report in April 23. So if we can change the resolution to reflect that, assuming that people are generally in agreement, then that would be the way to go. All right, and Piers, from your point of view, your team is capable of doing that. We're not putting a huge burden on the team, just given the comments you made around, reporting becomes easier the further into this we go.
Yes, I'm happy with doing that. The challenge being is to develop the system capability to get to that point, and that's the priority for one part of my team at the moment, to deliver that press button.
Right. Yeah, I mean, given that we're talking a year away, you'd anticipate there would have been some progress in that space in the meantime? Yeah. All right, great. Thank you. All right, so is there anything else on item 11 before we move to item 12? Sam and then Yanni.
Yeah, thanks, Piers. So I'm just trying to understand at a really basic level. So using that roof analogy you had, does that mean things like when we get this report back again and you've done more work on it, we will get to the point where we're preventing things like that Akara sort of issue? when you're talking about bricks and mortar? So are we getting down to that level where you will genuinely know if there is an issue? I'm just trying to see because I get what you're saying about the valuation uplift, but as you said, the driver behind that was actually, a lot of that was unit rate changes and that which pushed it up.
Correct.
But where does this tangibly lead to? That's the...
So in all aspects of our business, particularly at this level, you're about trying to manage that risk element. So the more information that we have to an appropriate level, because there's a cost trade-off to the amount of money that we invest in that helps us de-risk the business. Would it have directly helped Akaro? I can't really talk to that at the moment. I think that is a very complex area.
Even just at a practical level, though, those kind of assets is what I'm trying to get to. So
Yes.
So we'll get to the point where you've done this work, and there'll be, with more information being fed through, so that the tangible outcome is we can identify these issues a lot more proactively than we currently can.
You can only manage what you know about.
Yeah. Without sort of getting into it, I guess the frustration is though even in my time here, we keep talking about this. I'm just trying to see when we get to an end date on where a lot more of that information is available.
Well, as you can tell from the report itself, there's been significant improvement across the realm, so to speak. Is it ever going to? Am I ever just going to be able to hang my coat up and say we're done? No, it's a constant process of keeping the teams focused on working on the business to improve the way that they're working in the business aspect. So I'm not sure whether that really
That's okay.
answers.
That's fine. Thanks.
Thank you. Yanni.
Yeah, it's a similar line. If I go to the water supply, and we're told in terms of the pump stations, water supply pumping condition grade, and it's on page 129.
Right.
3.22, how complete reliable is the condition data? Uncertain. And then we've got 28% of water supply station assets not having a start-up date, the backlog, and an understated valuation data. We have assessed the water supply data as uncertain. I can't understand, and we're also told there's a backlog of renewal data, with all the focus we've had on water supply to try and get the chlorine out of the water. Like, how can we not have good information? Like, didn't we just go through this whole issue with the contractor and have this huge problem because of it, and yet nearly, 2-3 years on, we've still got uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
How are we managing that from a risk point of view? Because it would seem to me that would be one of the top priorities, and yet it doesn't appear to have been so.
The way that the report and the maturity of the way that we look at information trustworthiness, the team have taken quite a pessimistic view that if the information that we hold about an asset lives on a uncontrolled spreadsheet on somebody's hard drive that doesn't have sufficient breadth of visibility across that information, we don't consider it to be as trustworthy as having information in SAP or a GIS systems. So we take a pretty hard line to say that when we're making critical investment decisions, that having information that's derived from an uncontrolled spreadsheet that sits on Bob's desk, I don't consider that to be, for the purposes of this report, to be appropriate to bring to this table. The usage of some information to derive investment, the teams work with the information that they have and they make the best decisions that they can. As far as why haven't we fixed some of these problems, it's these reports that help us understand where the problems are.
Okay,
And
so what resolution do you need from us to get the water supply network condition data to a point where we can have certainty in it?
Well, I guess this is where the exceptions report comes in. If there is a resolution that says that you need to see a better understanding of that, the information around specific assets, I don't think there's a lot of value in saying just bring all the asset-related information up to a perfect level, unless you happen to have some funding that I'm unaware of. The focal area around these, as I said, it's wastewater treatment plant and it's pump stations. The teams are already focused in that area now that they understand the implications of how that information is being used or not used.
Sorry, so when will we get the backlog sorted? For
So the framework was agreed to last week as to how that backlog will be filled. It's not just a case of put a list in and upload it to the system. They have to agree to the framework of how that information is going to be used. Otherwise, that will drive a lot of cost.
So I guess it's a bit like the point Sam's making, though, is like, this is really valuable information, but, you know, we're currently spending money on all sorts of things, doing a long-term plan and having a resident survey. So I guess what I'm interested in is, like, how does this information guide what we invest in as a priority based on the presentation that we had from, and sorry, I can't remember the woman's name, which was an excellent presentation that said, if you've got things deteriorating, you know, you need to fix them rather than keep building new things, which is what we've been, you know, just last week we approved a few nice new road improvements, and yet we've got things that are chronically failing that are not being addressed because we don't have the information.
Well, it goes back to a question that I had at a previous committee meeting. Your involvement and interest in the information that underlies how these processes run is part of that value proposition. The team's already focused on driving that information uplift. We can always do with more resource and investment in that area. It comes back down to prioritisation within the organisation as to where this sits. Do we build do we invest in a road or a footpath, or do we invest in the information about that road and footpath? And there's a constant balancing act between effectively back office investment and front of office pathways, pools, libraries, etc., that the communities want to see. And that, I guess, is the balancing act that you have when you're trying to look at investment in, you know, IT enablement and digital citizen. That is another perennial challenge of how far do we invest in that compared with building a structure or investing in renewal. So it's not an easy question for me to answer in that give me $1 and I can deliver you a very specific outcome. We know where the priorities are, and that's what this report is here to highlight for you.
So do we have any, sorry, final question. Do we have any sense of when the water supply pump stations, that data we can have certainty in it?
I would expect by the end of the calendar year, that data set should be at a much better state. As I said, this week the teams have I believe, finalised the structure of how that information is going to be entered.
And nothing we can do to speed it up?
I don't think at this point, because the maintenance contract for the water supply and for the 3 waters environments is driving a lot of that as a matter of course. So, yeah.
And all of that speaks to getting that reported back to us in a year's time, once that work has been completed by year end, having it reported to us in that interim exception report that we referred to before. That all makes sense. Any further questions? Anne?
Kia ora. Yeah, thanks, Piers. Just 1.1.3 on page, I don't know what it is, 144. Performance. There is no performance data currently analysed for parks, and I'm just wanting to understand that a bit more. And also 1.1.5, confirm an appropriate methodology to assess asset performance. So can you tell us a bit more about that?
So the component about parks, I mean, it's the same for a lot of the assets, that we don't derive performance because we just replace the assets at an annualised cycle. So bus stations, they are replaced, quote me on this, but every 18 months a bus station is just replaced. There's no point doing condition or performance related information because it drives a huge amount of cost. We just know that, you know, on average these assets last this length of time. It would be the same for a park bench. We replace park benches at a level of regularity in that space. So that's, you know, there's an annualised replacement program that the teams manage. Yep.
All right, thank you. So, Jimmy, yes.
One question. Just take example, page 118. Here you mentioned the value. $1 million, this one. There's a date, present value, or is what kind of value?
Sorry, I can't recall exactly page 118. The value of which assets?
No, this one is like a wastewater pipe, you know. You have value. This value is after the depreciation value.
Well, it depends. Yes, it is. So if that's the depreciated number that you're referring to in there, then yes.
Okay, if that's true, because you mentioned in 2022, you presented to the council particular emphasis systemize and automation one. I'm not sure if that's true, whether those depreciation or technology innovation, you are also part of this report or not, particularly for the specific phase, those assets.
So are you asking, is the systemized approach that we're taking into account depreciation?
Yes, yes.
Yes, it just depends on how we cut the numbers.
Yeah, I know. But after several years, you can see this, the innovation is continuing, continue go on.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the existing asset cannot meet the future needs. It's not effectively or efficiently. In that kind of factor, you also consider.
Is it a factor that I consider in the creation of the report to use depreciation?
And also the technology innovation.
I mean, the technology can do whatever we need it to do. It's really around how we want to display those numbers, whether they are depreciated or optimized depreciated or otherwise in that space. So I'm not sure I understand quite the question.
Okay, maybe offline we might.
Yeah.
Ask.
All right,
Okay,
thanks, Jimmy. Thank you.
Offline, yes.
All right, so we've got some recommendations in front of us here. We've just changed the wording in the paragraph 3. And if we can just firm that up a little bit, actually, with an exceptions report to be submitted to the committee. Just makes it very, very clear what we're expecting. With an exceptions report to be submitted. Yep, that's fine. All right, so I'm happy to be the mover of that. Do I have a seconder? Sarah? All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. And then moving straight on to item 12 for the Asset Management Improvement Programme 6-monthly report. And I'm guessing, Piers, that takes us back to your presentation.
It does. So I've tried to distill it down. So we have been closing out a number of pieces of work. The first one of which is the asset management plan as part of the overall LTP programme. Very challenging piece of work. The templates and the bringing together all the different organisational components has been very challenging, and obviously there's a lot of the information that's used in these AMPs and the process used. Not only is the quality improved in my opinion and in some of the external audits that we've had of them, but it's helped us understand where some of the challenges are within the business. We have lots of documents now, but it's us understanding how we're going to improve on the capability that sits behind that pile of paper. So more importantly for me, this has been bringing the teams together in a much more strategic viewpoint for things like resilience and climate change, and really getting the teams to understand what does that actually mean in the context of an asset management plan. For 3.5.2, our strategic asset management plan. So if you can think about this as the asset strategy that links into all the other pieces of work, whether it's within the Three Waters team, the integrated Three Waters strategy, the infrastructure strategy, the financial strategy. We've got lots of strategies, and this helps distill the perspective for the asset plans. Now, we've got asset plans that for the first time in our history have been published externally. I'm not sure that there are a lot of constituents out there that sit there perusing over the hundreds and hundreds of pages, but the asset management plans themselves being published has actually shifted the way that the teams view that document. It becomes more of a living document because somebody might have eyes on it and may ask a question of them as to how the assets are being managed. It's part of our Local Government Act that we're looking after our assets. So these two pieces of work done in conjunction with one another, we've used the teams to help us understand strategically how the assets should be managed and where some of the pressure points are, and how do we link that into the rest of the process that's ongoing. Moving on to the next project that's really completed, you had an asset maturity report that came out. You've seen that. That's quite a significant piece of work in and of itself. And you can see that where the teams have invested in there, you get the biggest returns. And that's obviously around the asset systems and the information that we use. That's the area of focus for my team and also for a lot of the other teams. The other project that was that we've completed out recently, I've tried to put a diagram together. So we had a white paper that came to the committee, which was trying to look at what the future state of asset management at council looks like and what are some of those priorities. And the focus is building trust in that information that comes through. There's no point me putting a report up if you can't trust the information that sits behind it. We're about creating asset management insights, so that's some of the planning tools, that AAIF, for instance, that are reported through. We try and bridge the technology and the business in their asset management function, and that's obviously to improve the capability and de-risk the business. As far as the outcomes, we don't want to have 15 sources of truth where everybody's arguing that that's the truth. We want to provide information that you go, that is the authoritative space. We want effective governance and oversight, so it's part of this presentation today. And more importantly, we're trying to take a whole of asset life approach. We build a structure, we do a capital investment, and then the cost of managing that structure over its 100, 150, 200-year life cycle, that's where the real opportunities come in, because that's predominantly an OPEX-related cost. So we're trying to look at how do we understand the information that sits behind it. And then obviously around organisation-wide asset management leadership, I try and put that exciting subject onto the table of everybody I can. And sometimes that's challenging, but having these reports coming to you and your engagement forms part of that system. And then obviously underneath it, we're there to develop competent, motivated staff in this area. So that project completed, and that's really providing a framework for how we move forward with each one of the asset management teams looking after those assets for communities. And I guess whilst there's a lot of detail that sits in the programme, I guess the takeaway from this is that we are progressing projects. We are moving through the system. The quantitative measurement that we provide you through our maturity assessment report, that hopefully gives you trust that through external audits, progress is being made and that there is a programme and a systemised approach that we're taking to improving the asset capability and the oversight that we provide into it. So for each one of those areas, we're looking and supporting the teams across those outcomes. And I think that's pretty much about it as far as the programme. I'm happy to take any questions on the programme in and of itself.
All right, thank you very much. Are there questions on this report? All right, so we're just moving to receive this, which I'm happy to do. Jimmy Chen seconds. Any debate? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Piers, thanks very much indeed for presenting these to us today, and to you and the team for the work done in pulling these reports together. Thanks very much indeed.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. All right, so that now brings us to item 13, Capital Delivery Major Facilities Elected Member Updates. Alistair, welcome to the table, or welcome back to the table. We'll take the report as read, but are there any highlights that you want to draw our attention to?
No, one particular one would be the OMC, because the pictures are quite old, so the old municipal chambers, the pictures are quite old, and for those that have noticed there's a huge scaffold going around the facility at the moment, and that is to enclose the building in a plastic wrap, which means we can start stripping the building internally and externally. So it's a really positive move forward for the team, and great to see that work being done. So that's probably the only real update on across the elected member updates as a whole, really.
Yeah, great. And whilst there isn't perhaps a lot worthy of particular note in here, it is good to get these reports, and it is good to see progress across a number of these projects. And yeah, in particular, as you say, old municipal chambers, some very obvious work going on there, which is great to see.
Yep.
Thank you. Moving to questions. No questions? Nope. Jan.
Cathedral Square, are we going to get some sort of report? Because obviously you've made reference to MB and the hotel having the exercise area, and you're saying that they're thinking about relocating it. And I know that we've also got, and I've only seen what's in the media, there's big plans for the old post office building. But is there any kind of report that's going to come around what's actually being done, bringing all the kind of Cathedral Square stuff together?
Yep. So we're doing it's a light master plan, if you will, for the whole of the activities right across each section of the square.
Right.
One in particular, we've been dealing with the MB and MIQ facility for Distinction Hotel, and we've got a way forward with that, which we're negotiating with them at the moment, which is to take up some private land that's being utilised, that can be utilised elsewhere and off the actual square itself, which is a good way forward. Which will allow us to commence that work in that south-east corner. We're working with the Chamberlain team on the old post office building as well with regards to that piece of work, which is the southwest corner. Southwest corner. And that's a piece of work that we're negotiating with them as well, and it all becomes part and parcel of the master plan. So it's about tidying the area in the northwest corner as well, which is adjacent the Tapai Convention Centre. So we're doing work in that area as well. So we're just planning and pulling everything together at the moment in one view, right. Which incorporates obviously the memorial removal, the demolition of the old police kiosk, all these sort of things tie into one master plan. So we're pulling that together while we've had the downtime in between not being able to do the southeast. We're pulling that together at the moment. So that's a piece of work that's underway, and we will be bringing that back for a review.
So when are we likely to see? Because I think the Mayor just said good news story. So, I mean, it is good to see, more progress and things getting done in the square and it being tidied up. So when are we likely to kind of see what the big picture is for the square?
He's just said that.
Yeah. Just what we're doing is, again...
Sorry, is there a date that...
So the project steering group's this Friday. Right. So I'll be at that steering group where I expect to hear from the project manager the full view on the next steps for us, which will inform the next elected member update, which will be 2 months from now. But we'll be bringing a master plan back to council for view to see what we're doing, because that's the intent at the moment, is to try and wrap it all up in one piece.
Yep.
Yes, yeah. Yep. So that, yep. So that was Chris, who is the project manager, decided that was the best way forward with that.
Yep. All right. Thank you very much, Aaron.
Yeah, just something that was raised last week, Alistair, at the disability hui was week before now. It was changing spaces, and with us as a city having a number of major facilities we're developing or redeveloping. When are we likely to see them go in? We were kind of given a heads up on it a couple of years ago, so one of the first cities invited into the program, and it looks like we'll be one of the last to be in the program, yet we're doing the most building.
Across the whole portfolio?
Yeah, because to be a destination city for the access dollar, we need these spaces in various, you'd expect it anywhere that might host anything, which is pretty much everything on this list.
Yeah. So Hornby is included. We are doing that with Hornby, and we are looking at it for the square at the moment. We also so Rachel, who is amazing when you get her in the room with our design teams. Rachel is also engaged with the CMUA design team now that they literally came on board, and she was in the room the next day, which is fantastic.
Right.
So she's certainly being heard, and they are including to meet those needs and wants for the disability community and accessibility community. So.
Yeah, because the convention centre turned down the opportunity. It was late in the piece, but and the Metro Sports facility is that having a changing spaces or something better? I heard it's good.
I need to ask that question. I'm not as heavily involved.
Yeah, if we could get, if you're able to send through some design detail or something to present to that the disability working group at the next meeting would be real handy, just so everyone there's happy. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Jake.
In terms of moving that exercise area, are you able to tell us where you're looking at leasing that land, or?
It's not us. It's Sergio, who is the owner of the Spark building and the building across the road, also owns the sites at the back of there as well, at the rear of that. So we've got a plan that John Meeker from our strategy.
So it is off that you guys are looking at. Perfect. Cool.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. No further. Oh, Anne.
Thank you. Following on actually from Aaron, there's a youth audit tool that I'm not sure if you're aware of. Is there a youth voice involved in this work?
Yeah, so which particular piece? Okay, I can talk.
Well,
I can definitely talk to the CMUA,
right,
because I know in the early days of the engagement process we went through, we did go and meet the youth group, and we presented, and we've taken feedback from them on the initial designs. I'll be honest that at the minute, the amount of workshops that the current teams are doing on the CMUA are phenomenal. The B6 Wattpack team have hit the ground, not running, sprinting, I'd say. And there's a lot of my team and the team that's been onboarded in the period have been engaged probably 3 times a day at the moment in workshops. So it's they know what they've got to meet, and they know the objectives, and all of those entities have been listed as stakeholders to be engaged with. At the minute, we're in concept ratification, which is more around the structure and the eventual outcomes we're trying to achieve. So yes, they are on the list, and they will have an opinion and a voice in the process, yeah, without doubt.
But you've got a separate report on that anyway.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we have got this set of resolutions in front of us, so just receiving the information in the update. I'm happy to move that. Do I have a seconder? Pauline? Any debate? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. Now, I had indicated that we would take a break at 11 o'clock. It's now 3 minutes to. I do want to give time to do the multi-use arena report justice. So, Alistair, that means that we'll need to bring you back to do that one. So we'll look forward to doing that after we've considered items 14, 15 and 20. So we'll come back and do that one separately. So thank you very much indeed. And I'll now adjourn the meeting until 11:15. Can I please request that we are back at 11:15 ready to start, because we do have here who are expecting to be able to present at 11:15. So we'll break now until 11:15, but we'll be starting back bang on 1:15. Thank you.
NZ, do you guys want to come up to the table? Welcome, Joe and Therese. And thanks very much for making the time. I know you've got another appointment as well, so it's great you can come through. I think we can largely take it as read, but do you want to just run through anything at a high level, and then we'll open up for questions if anyone has any. I'm kind of keen to keep the meeting moving if we can. So.
Good morning. I just wanted to run you through just a few points. Part of the report is the half-year report to 31 December, and I would just note on that CNZ has been successful in achieving further central government funding than expected. I also want to refer back to the workshop, which was, I think, last week, and note to you that we have taken into account, or we will in the feedback provided about this funding needing to be updated, both the third party and the LTP funding. There were just some anomalies that need to be updated. There's a few performance measures that need to have benchmark targets put in, which CNZ is working towards achieving. They're currently working on the urban development work pipeline, which won't be completed in time for 30 June, but will be well progressed. And the only other comment we would raise is whether the SOI should have, or it would be useful to have, the breakdown of funding allocation to the particular activity groups in the SOI, acknowledging that though that's an indication of the allocation and may change, but that gets picked up in reporting and becomes very transparent. And that's all I wanted to say.
Great, thank you very much. Joe or Therese, is there anything you want to run through?
Yeah, just very briefly, thank you, Chair. I just want to thank you all for the input that you gave us during the workshop session last week. As Linda said, that feedback will be incorporated into the next version of the draft. It was a very useful feedback, and in particular in relation to multicultural committees, so thank you for that. The performance measures that are, the two documents in front of you, the Q2 report, as Linda said, we're well on target, and we're very pleased to be able to present this to you today. And then the statement of intent obviously looks at our activity over the next 3 years and is aligned with the level of funding that has been outlined in the draft LTP and gone out for consultation. Happy to answer any specific questions.
Therese, is there anything you wanted to add? Or?
I would echo what Joanna has said. It's been a great first half, and we're really looking forward to getting our SOI locked away and continue to deliver that for Christchurch.
Great. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? No? Oh, Yanni. I paused for too long then.
Just on the, yeah, I note that you've got a partnership with the Crusaders, and noting that we've got like a home final coming up. Have you got anything planned? I mean, do you have like, I just remember back in the Rinfley Shield games, the city, used to get really excited about a final or a key game, and there used to be a lot of central city promotion. So I just wondered, do you kind of have capacity to do that one-off sort of special events promotion?
Yes, we do, and I don't want to be presumptuous about the performance of the team because we have no control over that. Yeah. But what we do control is the way that we reach the Crusaders' audiences, so that the partnerships are directly designed to reach the largest possible audience, which we largely do through the broadcast audience. If we are in a position to be celebrating holding the cup, then we may look at tactical activations to reach our own residents as well.
But in terms of the game day or people coming to the city, do we do anything to celebrate?
Yeah, I wonder, just in terms of what we're trying to achieve here, it's probably a really detailed question that maybe you could take offline with Joe and the team. I'm just conscious we have got, I mean, it's a really operational thing.
Just the other, the other question was just around the Buskers Festival, the Bread and Circus. Are we going to get a detailed sort of report around the expenditure and the attendance and kind of an evaluation of how it's gone?
Now, we report through to this committee on the performance that is captured within our levels of service and our statement of intent. That incorporates the Buskers performance. We would need to hold a special session in relation to Buskers at your request. It's not part of our normal reporting.
Great. Okay, thank you. Anything else? Jimmy?
I reviewed the 4.5, the third bullet point. I'm not sure in here. Why mention the meets commitment reduce the organization specific carbon emission by 2045? I remember based on council, those later the expectation is focused by 2030. There's carbon emission neutrality, am I right? Is rather than 2045.
And this is the target that we've been given in the letter of expectation. And if you want to revise that, you'll need to let us know with a revised letter of expectation.
Okay.
We did discuss that at the workshop that we had, and we noted that you would like us to have that 2030 target in the LOE for next year for Christchurch, New Zealand.
Yeah, thanks. That's a very good point. We have been through it, Jimmy.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
who would like to move this? Sarah would like to move it. Who would like to second it? Jimmy would like to second it. Is there any discussion? Yanni?
Yeah, thanks. I do think it would be good to get a formal report back on the Buskers Festival. When we agreed to the new format, we did put in quite a considerable investment, and I think it would be good just to kind of understand how that's going. Now, obviously, COVID-19's had a massive impact, but it just seems to me that for the level of expenditure that we put into something with an expectation of getting a certain outcome, it would be really good to see how that's going. So I don't know how others feel about that, but that would certainly be. We do have some very limited information in the 6 monthly report, but it's certainly not detailed enough.
Cool. Is anyone else? No. Oh no, we're in debate. Yeah. So the only other thing I'd say is, I mean, that workshop last week was really, or the week before was really useful, and I know you're on the same page when you talk about tangible, measurable outcomes, and we certainly look forward to that being delivered. So thanks very much for making the time to come in. We really appreciate you both here as Chief Exec and Chair. So.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you. Now we'll hand back to Andrew and V-Base. Do you want to come up to the table?
Someone cares about the Buskers.
Thank you. So I'd now invite the representatives from venues Otautahi to the table. And we've got item 20, the draft statement of intent and the half-year performance report. So Linda, if you've got some introductory remarks, and then if the team from venues Otautahi would like to make any comments, that would be helpful, and then we'll move to questions. Thank you.
So we have both the half-year report to 31 December and the draft SOI. Half-year performance better than expected, fewer events but more catering. Big issue is with fewer events, the loss of the social benefit that's not monetised, so it's less, it's not so easy to see. The draft SOI, we are working with Venues Otautahi to update the capital expenditure requirements for the life of the LTP. In the current draft, the Orange Theory Stadium funding is shown separately and will be reported against separately in the quarterly reports. The assumptions on the financials are that the international borders open in the 22-23 year, but as Caroline has said before, there's huge amount of volatility due to the uncertainty in that of events and how the COVID restrictions might track in future. Just wanted to remind you that Venues Otautahi faces high fixed costs that are uncontrollable relating to the Town Hall and the Christchurch Arena. And finally, that there are no Samoa operating costs or revenues reflected in the SOI. That information is not known at this stage. And that's my rundown.
All right, thank you. Is there any commentary from the team from Venues o Taitahi? This is the second time we've seen you this week. Of course, we had the benefit of the workshop earlier in the week, which allowed this item to come onto the agenda. So, thank you.
No, all good, thank you. And look, probably similarly to Christchurch NZ, thank you for your time on Tuesday. It's been really helpful to continue to have that discussion together, and we obviously have some revisions to make to our draft SOI as a result. We also, probably of note by way of the half-year performance report, albeit we were impacted by COVID and the impacts of that, you can see some of the changes that we have made to the business, particularly by way of reduced operating costs and the change to local procurement, that is genuinely having an impact commercially for the organisation. So that is a real positive, noting that obviously the social and cultural impacts of events in the city has not been as great given the reduced number of events. Just of note with regard to CMUA, the discussion we had kind of in the last couple of days by way of any assumptions that could be made in LTPs, etc., could be baseline what's in the investment case, but as a placeholder, because obviously we at the moment are working through quite a detailed analysis and particularly dovetailing into the detailed concept design at the moment, and just establishing how those things will actually translate into the operating model for the CMUA. But
thank you. So looking at the half-year performance report, the fact that in the current environment, 41 events cancelled, you've managed to exceed budget, I think is a significant achievement and well done. And also noting some of the changes that you've made to the operating model, bringing the catering in-house, and obviously a strong focus on food and beverage performance and flexibility around staffing levels. I'm guessing that they're all things that have played into that space of being able to exceed budget in that very constrained and uncertain environment.
Yeah, so we've really, and we're forced really into, at the end of June last year, we downsized by around 60%, and really changed from quite a fixed resourcing model to quite a variable resourcing model. So we have a core skeleton staff and we can flex as we need to with a more casual workforce. And that will remain, albeit as we get more into business as usual, there will need to be the ability to probably increase that fixed model just slightly, but it certainly won't return to such a fixed model that we had prior to COVID.
Okay, thank you. And then looking forward into the draft statement of intent, referring to paragraph 3.12 in our report, you'll have completed the development of the economic model and prioritisation methodology to further inform draft SOI forecasts by the time the final SOI is due. Are you expecting that to deliver major changes to the statement of intent, and at the same time noting obviously this is non-financial rather than financial? Are you expecting that to drive major change?
We don't expect it to drive major change, no.
I've been engaging with Venues o Taitahi on these two models, which I am due to go and have a session with them to be updated. They already have been taken into account to a large extent in the current draft SOI forecasts, so that they are built on that prioritisation model.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Any further questions on the six-monthly half-year performance report or on the SOI? Yanni.
Thanks. Similar to the question asked at the workshop, but what I struggle to see from the performance report is which of the venues are performing and which ones aren't. So what I'm really interested to understand is like the temporary stadium, you know, how is that performing given that we're underwriting it? The Hagley Oval, which I know VBAS have had a relationship with. So do we have any kind of sense of what's happening across the venues in terms of ones that are at least paying for themselves, not generating profit, but not making massive losses?
Yes, I mean, we obviously own and operate the town hall and the arena, and working with other as the operator and manager of the likes of Hagley Oval operator, and working with other owners there. It is And we've just taken on and transitioned just in the last month for working with council on the Orange Theory Stadium. We'll need to build on that information, but we actually do have our event contribution is shown as a one line within the statement of intent, but we do have that information on each of the venues, and so we can draw that out and provide some further detail on that.
Yeah, we can certainly split it out. I think the couple of challenges, and one is sort of albeit resolved somewhat with the transition of the stadium to and the underwrite from Council for Orange Theory, is that now that is a break even because of that. The Hagley Oval, for instance, we have at times we need to have a look at some of the commercial arrangements that have been put in place over the years, and we run at a bit of a loss, particularly because of the R&M associated with the pavilion. And then Town Hall and Arena, we can split out those numbers, but they're a bit more in our control.
Yeah, just to jump in, I think some of this, I mean, there are clearly some commercial sensitivities around some of the broader subject matter we're talking about here, may well be dealt with more appropriately in a briefing at the right time, rather than in this particular forum today, given that to have the discussions that Yanni's wanting to have fully, it will inevitably require some discussion around commercially sensitive information.
So we're going to get a separate memo back, aren't we, on the transition of the Orange Theory Stadium? Is that?
Yeah, we did discuss that on Tuesday. It'll be a joint report back from the council and Venues Otatahi.
Right. Do we have a date for the transition to be complete though?
We're still waiting to hear from DPMC and the trust on that.
Okay.
All right.
Just the other thing that I just in terms of I see in the statement of intent, but just in terms of the community access, what the community rate? Yeah, I guess I was just interested to kind of understand how many community groups were using your venues, if you've got like a figure, and yeah, I guess just to get some sense of who's actually using the community rate.
Back on that, obviously we've given you the number of events and the financials on that, but we can certainly break that down a little bit further as to who those groups are.
And that is shown quarterly as well in regard to our performance measures, so both quarterly and within the half-year reports. That's right, and we'll be reporting very shortly on the results through to March, and even with moving into alert levels and the like, we are certainly on track in regard to that performance measure.
Any further questions? Anne?
Yes, further, another further question on the local cultural rate. Is there any opportunity to develop some sort of sponsorship model where businesses are actually able to pay for the money for groups to use venues? Is there something that you've thought about?
Similarly, in a way, is how we're trying to structure the Otatahi Collective and that more syndicate approach to naming rights. And so every one of those bespoke partnerships will have a community fund. One of the other opportunities in the partnership is to be able to sponsor certain events, and we could actually build in certain groups as well. And the nice thing about how we're hopefully going to be able to design these bespoke partnerships is that businesses who partner with us will actually be able to align their strategic drivers with how they design their partnership. And so if that is something that's important to their business, then that's something we could build in. Yeah.
See that you could actually build really strong connections and relationships between businesses and community groups and support them financially to get to use the venues. You can see that happening.
Yeah, I think there are a few businesses around that really want to do more in their corporate and social responsibility and community engagement, and if we can support that and bring that connection to the fore, then that would be a wonderful thing to be able to do. Yeah.
Thank you. That's really encouraging, because it is about equity and equity of accessibility to our venues. So thanks for that.
Yeah, no, good.
Thank you. So I'm happy to move the recommendation that's in front of us. Do I have a seconder for that? Sam MacDonald. Is there any debate? Yanni. They're both together in this. So if you're not done with questions, we'll come back to questions. Yes?
So that's so we're currently paying the interest cost. The principal is 14.8 million.
14.8 million still to go on that. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay, so this has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate? All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. So now we'll move to the equivalent reporting from CCHL. So Sam, if I can get you to jump back into the chair.
Cool. Okay, do you want to run through, just at a really high level, what you can, acknowledging that the CCHL can't be here to answer their stuff in this forum, and then what we'll do is obviously note that councillor directors are stepping back, and then we'll go straight to questions, and then I know Yanni's got some amendments which I think this team have come up with, and then we'll see if anyone else got any changes, and then move through it. So do you want to run us through really briefly?
Me. This is just the draft SOI. CCHL have already come before you with the quarterly report. The key aspects I just want to run through are that the financials in the draft statements are draft financials. They're still in their business planning period, and they will be finalised in time for the final SOI. The CCHL report that accompanies the draft SOIs has drawn out a number of omissions that they intend going back to their subs to rectify. A number of them are errors, but they will all be picked up, and we'll reinforce them in the feedback we give to make sure that we've got a record to compare when we get the final SOIs. Broadly, the financials, based on the draft numbers, are improved over expectations last year. That's all, again, drawn out in the CCHL report. Most, if not all of them, have commitments to living wage, commitments to diversity, commitments to executive remuneration restraint, commitments to group sustainability and carbon reduction, noting that it's quite complex and they're approaching that at a group level. And one other a key omission that is going to be addressed is the airport's dividend expectations, which they took out last year and haven't put back in, but we'll be asking them to.
Very good. Thank you for that. Lena, is there anything you have to add?
No, I mean, just apologies from the CCHL team that nobody's here to answer direct questions, and we'll take note of any questions which we can give to Paul and the team if they arise.
Yep, sure. Thank you. Okay, so we'll go through questions. Mike, do you want to start?
Thank you. It's actually really disappointing that we don't have CCHL staff here. We've just had Christchurch NZ and Venues Otatahi present with both their CE and chair. So I've got a couple of questions, and I'm going to have to direct
questions
them.
would be good.
Yeah, but I'm just saying
statements.
it's actually going to affect my decision I make, because I can't make a decision unless I get a good
that's
answer.
fair point, but can
So
I ask
to Dawn, with regards to the statement of intent for DCL, do you believe this reflects the directive that Council gave CCHL at the public excluded meeting on the 28th of May 2020?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I missed the first question.
Do you believe that the content within the DCL statement of intent actually reflects the directive that Council gave CCHL at the public excluded meeting on the 28th of May 2020.
If you give me a few minutes, I will
So
reflect on that
yeah.
and try and answer that.
You move to your next question.
Thank you. Another question. In our letter of expectation to CCHL, we ask in there that all members of its wider group target carbon neutrality by 2030.
Mm-hmm.
In the statement of intent, they've actually said that it's going to be a group target.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to know the reasoning behind this. And actually, are we letting companies transition not as quickly as Council has requested?
I think on that particular issue, it would be far more informative for a CCHL member to discuss that. I think the key issue there is that at a group level, targeting it at a group level allows them to manage the different impacts that some are facing more so than others, and it gets them, it's an intermediate step to get the group as a whole there, and then to move to addressing those companies that have quite a lot more exposure to, or create much more carbon.
Look, and thanks, I don't expect you to actually answer the question. I'd expect someone from CCHL to answer this question. But to me, I think they've just letting some of the companies off the hook for doing some work that's actually needed to happen.
Can we just go to questions for now? There'll be definitely a time for debate, Mike. I'll guarantee you that.
Well, I would love to ask questions if I had the appropriate people here to ask them to.
Okay, well, I can't fix that today, but if you just calm down a wee bit. Yeah.
That's very
So you're actually not participating in... Yeah. So can we just stop for a sec? If everyone just stops. Right. So, right, what were you going to say? So you turn your mic on.
Yeah, so the feedback we had that was that we could add some information if it was useful, but not participate in debate and voting.
Right, so if it's useful...
Yeah, I was just saying that we have and my understanding is that we have a briefing or workshop coming up with CCHL on their climate work really soon, so that might be really helpful. Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah. That's great. Any other questions? Yanni?
So, thanks. Just wanted to check in regards to the statements of intent. Like, we keep seeming to repeat the same information around senior executive remuneration, and I see a number of them haven't even set targets. So, is there anything you think we should be asking CCHL to and getting their companies to do differently that would get a better outcome?
The LOE picked up the concern or the request for CCHL to ask its subsidiaries to work on closing the gap between the highest and lowest paid. CCHL sent its own LOEs to its subsidiaries before they received our LOE, and they have said that they will pick those issues up that came through in their feedback to the subsidiaries, so I would expect that to go through to the subsidiaries.
But so I'm just trying to find the page. There's that table that shows, there you go, it's on page 173. So Orion has got no comment on executive remuneration, and it's just got executive remuneration, no specific targets, no specific targets, no specific targets, no specific targets, no comments, no specific targets. And in living wage, it's got no comment from CAAL. And, you know, there's some companies that should be praised for actually addressing it. But then there's other ones that, like ECL, no comment, and City Care Limited, it's a TBC. So, right, I just don't know, like how do we get them to set targets?
Oh, right. So are you looking at the box that is in the CCHL report?
Yeah, so it's
last
page
column.
173. and it's the last two columns. It's a really good, like, I really appreciate whoever's put this report together. That's such a good way of showing things that we've asked for in the LOE, and how they're being addressed. So, you know, it's really clear, but it feels like they're just completely taking the mickey out of us in regards to executive remuneration, where we keep asking the same thing, but we keep getting a worse outcome. And if you look at I don't know if you've had a chance to see the information that was sent through, but we're seeing, you know, huge bonuses still being paid, and we don't seem to see very much of a reduction. So anyway.
I mean, the short-term incentive schemes that were operated by some of the subs, you all note that last year's annual report identified some were being phased out and were basically being replaced by core remuneration. And I think that was mentioned at a workshop that CCHL and Jeremy and Paul attended, which basically showed, you know, that all these market considerations, where they're competing for executive remuneration in the market, they are pitching it at an appropriate level. That has not been benchmarked versus the public sector, but it actually has been benchmarked against the commercial operations.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue. So they keep benchmarking against the commercial and the private sector. If you look at City Care, their remuneration went up $100,000 in 1 year. You know, that's insane. $100,000 in 1 year at a time when we know groups are struggling.
Yeah, I mean, I get this completely the sentiment. I know you've got amendments to that effect. CCHL aren't here to answer these. So, I mean, if there's a way in which you could describe potentially how we could look at further targets, but I'm not sure basically having got our staff over it is the most useful way of doing it. So,
right. So basically,
yeah,
I've put up an amendment that we, that we include some feedback, because there should be able to be targets set, particularly around that relativity in terms of top to bottom.
Okay,
and also
that's really useful. So have you got any more questions? And then we will get to your amendments as well.
Yeah.
Could I just perhaps add that?
You can if you have to. Yep. I'm just what I want to do is give everyone the chance to ask questions. So does anyone else?
The only other question I had. Stuff.
Does anyone? I thought Jake, did you not have a? Oh right. Just the usual.
It's just a bit hard not having CCHL here. And I just think it's unfair on our staff at this stage.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but I just think this is that productive.
Yep. Melanie. Yep.
I'm just flagging I've sent through another amendment based off what Mike was talking about.
Okay, I'll forward it. Yeah, that's useful. Does anyone else have any questions? Jimmy.
On page 173, regarding to the CCHL accessory company, some of the comments, based on these 5 categories, no any comments. I don't know what I mean. And what I mean is a commitment for those kind of target or goals, or is I don't know. And also, what is the CCHL the attitude regarding to this response? No comments.
It's exactly the same question Yanni asked.
Yeah. Is there any other question? Yeah. Yeah. So let's stop again. Is there anything in addition to what you already answered that you can provide to Jimmy to give him some reassurance?
I could just repeat that we are going to be addressing...
No, anything in addition.
No, okay.
Yep. No, cool. Right, James.
Okay.
Thanks, Tim.
New question. Do you know, because I think that it is tough on US staff, do you know when, or why at least, CCHL isn't here for the public record?
Yeah, it's not really a question for them.
No. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm aware.
Okay. Well, then put it back through then.
So the
I wasn't sure if I was allowed to ask you or
so the chief executive's unavailable, and as you'll be aware, the chief financial officer is literally starting here next week, so is on leave. It was just unfortunate timing in that respect. But again,
It is unfortunate too,
yeah, what
because
we
they're
reiterated,
valid questions too.
Yeah.
That need answers.
Yeah, but what we
not for them.
reiterated though is we'll again raise it, and
I'm
I'm
making my
sure the
point.
directors will as well with the chair. So yeah.
What's that?
They don't have 3 staff members
Yeah.
at the moment.
All right.
One of them was going to be here.
That's what
That's
the chair's
okay.
just
We've
said,
just,
yeah.
yeah, we're good. Right, Yanni, and then I'm keen to.
So, just in the, we're told that there's regular reporting on remuneration expectations, but I'm just trying to understand how that actually happens. Because, like, I guess from my observation, like, we've only been told, oh, that's what the market pays. We haven't actually seen them report on that as per one of our measures. So do we need to put, I mean, I don't know what you get as staff. Do they report every 6 months on what's happening around the CEO remuneration?
No, they report, the reporting that they do to councillors generally in the F&P meeting, or if there is a workshop, and it's usually a verbal report.
Right, but it doesn't really go into, so if you just look at under 2.4, letter of expectation, key requirements, periodic reporting on achieving remuneration expectations across the group.
And so their answer is generally that they do engage with their boards of their subsidiary companies on that issue. And that's, I would say broadly, as much as they can do within the framework, the commercial framework that they have for the companies, the group.
So could we ask, for example, for them to show the trends, report on the trends, or
The trends in the market, or the trends...
the trends of what they're paying in terms of senior executive remuneration across senior management?
Are there any other questions?
We could ask CCHL that question to provide some trend analysis.
So is there any other questions? What I'd be really keen to do is, can I just adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes? I just want to take some advice on something that may resolve Mike's issue about CCHL not being here. So can we come back at, say, 12:05, please? aren't they? Yep. Oh, Tim's not here. Where's... clarity on where we're at. I think the most important thing out of this is, and Mike raised it at the very beginning, was the need to have CCHL here to answer some of the questions. I don't think it's useful us beating them up in a public forum, and they need to be here to be able to explain, quite rightly, as the company that holds our shares, what they're doing and that. So what we've done is taken some advice from the team, and we are comfortable that if we refer this, we'll leave it laying on the table today, noting that the amendments are there, and that we'll refer it to the council meeting on the 13th of May. The staff are confident this doesn't slow down anything in terms of our reporting requirements between the organisations, but it just gives a bit of time for CCHL to come in and answer the questions that Mike and the team have quite rightly raised. So I think it's a far better approach. I'm happy to, and I'll be chairing it because Leanne and Andrew will be conflicted. So I'm happy to move that we leave it laying on the table. Tim will second it. All in favour? Against? That's carried. Great, thank you, and thanks Mike for raising that valid point. Okay, we'll give it back to Andrew now.
Okay, so moving to our final open agenda item, which is the one outstanding matter from earlier, which is, I'm just turning to here, item 21, the Canterbury Multi-Use Arena Elected Member Update. Alistair, thank you for waiting with us. So this is the report that comes to us every 2 months, alongside the Capital Delivery Major Facilities report, but we're now reporting this separately to call out the significance of this particular project, and so that any information is wrapped in this separate report. So we'll take the report as read, but certainly would welcome any remarks or comments up front.
Just to say that it's the decision to appoint the Kortui team and the B6 Watpac team has been found already to be extremely good choice. They have brought so much to the table, not only just it's the knowledge and experience, but also the speed and efficiency to deliver on tasks and deadlines that we're trying to meet, which we're trying to meet at a great deal of pace at the moment. So to see them break ground with the geotech work on site and the continuance of the decontamination work that we've done is another step forward. But in the background, there is an awful lot of work being done to get ourselves to a concept ratification phase. So that's
Great, thank you. So thank you for that introduction. Thank you for the report. Now moving to questions. Yanni.
Thanks. I had three questions. One was, given that this is probably the most significant facility that we're gonna build going forward, and it will be, the impacts will be generational, is there any opportunity to engage with our youth council or with the city's youth council around design?
Anne asked that question before, and I said yes, we will. Yep.
Yeah. So okay. The other question was, reading the integrated traffic assessment, it's really clear that we need to figure out where the entrances and exits are in terms of egress before we design the streets around it.
Yep.
So I was a bit concerned, that we were making some decisions on some roading improvements ahead of the design around egress. What sort of, at what stage will we know where the exit and entry points are?
So it will be at concept ratification, which is due to be is June this year. We will know what the concept design will inform the preliminary design. The ITA was done at a time when we were looking at the proof of concept, and the proof of concept was indicative at the time as the location of the project structure on the site. And the transport team that we worked with, and Oricon who drove the ITA, the transport assessment, worked on that principle and that basis, which informed the LTP requirements for the funding in the future years. So that's been part and parcel of the whole process we've gone through. Now we're at a time where we actually confirm or ratify that concept design, and that's the piece of work that's underway right now to get a concept ratification so that we can present that to councillors. And that's in June this year. So,
right. And then the final question was in regards to the NG building, which I see the Crown has now acquired. As I understand it, that's been acquired.
Yes.
So that will be transferred over to us, or the Crown takes responsibility for it?
LINZ have the responsibility to deliver the Super Lot 2 to the project.
Right. So in terms of us wanting to not make a decision about the future of that building, but to ask how elements of it could be incorporated into the design, if feasible.
Isn't that a question for councillors, and we should discuss that?
Yeah, well, that's what I wanted to raise. At what point do we have to make a decision on the future of that building?
You don't. LINZ make that decision.
Right. So the only opportunity we have, if we as councillors feel concerned that it should either be saved or relocated, what process do we have to express that?
So the company that you have appointed in CMUA Project Delivery Limited have written 3 times to LINZ to acquire the site and the buildings on that site in order to deliver the Canterbury Multi-Use Arena.
So it'll just be demolished without us having any say?
It'll be between LINZ and the owner of the property as to what happens to the building.
Right.
So the expectation that the project delivery company have got is that that site will be delivered as a vacant site?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And the responsibility for removing the building from that site sits with LINZ?
LINZ, yes.
Thank you.
So, but we approve the design as council?
Of what?
Of the stadium.
You'll view the concept, the preliminary designs, the developed designs, and you'll go through a briefing sessions with each of those designs as they go through the process, yes.
Right. So could we ask consideration be incorporated with the NG building?
Not at the moment, because the CMUA PD Limited
Is that a conversation
LINZ, and LINZ have gone down the process. They've gone down to acquire the property.
Right. Okay.
Thank you. Sam.
Thank you. Just on probably on a completely different vein. In terms of the delegations register and the like, when are we looking at that coming to us for the board?
So
to get some clarity.
I think it's about aligning stars at the moment and getting everyone in the right room at the right time. There is a board meeting on the 7th, which is next Friday, and I think there is some work to be done around acquiring some time for the board to review the current delegations.
So is there anything you need from us to provide that direction, or is it all in hand?
It's in hand at the moment. It's in play.
No, we don't need any direction. We know what the direction is.
But it will come back in,
Yes, it will come
in
back.
the appropriate time.
Yes, it
Yep,
will.
cool, thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Any further questions? So Sam, you'll move. Do we have a seconder? Tim? All right, so we're just receiving the information in the update. Is there any debate? Yanni?
Yeah, thanks. I'd just like to move an additional resolution that the council write to LINZ to support What do you mean we're in debate? Okay, I haven't spoken. Let's sort of move an amendment.
This has been moved and seconded. We're now in debate. So it's an amendment, okay, so move it as an amendment.
Right, yeah, just an additional resolution that basically that council write to LINZ, who I presume are another property owner of the NG building, supporting it either being retained or relocated if possible.
Point of order, can we get some clarity on if that's within standing orders, or whether it's actually an amendment that can be put? Because that's inconsistent with the advice we've just received.
Okay, can I get some
Surely we
advice
can
on that,
write
please?
to LINZ, it's within our power.
Yeah, but we don't want to just virtue signal. If we can't do anything
Okay.
about it, there's no point. So
No.
So, so can we get the proposed amendment put up?
Council
first of
write to
all?
LINZ,
Yep.
expressing support for the NG building, retention, yeah, or its relocation.
Or retention or relocation, presumably, is what you want, is it? Of the NG building.
retention is, are we leaving it there? Relocation is picking up.
Well, retention's still.
Yeah, but
It's really just so that as they're going through the design, if there's any opportunities they consider, so.
All right, so the question that I'm being asked is whether that amendment is in order.
Design the building.
Is it relevant to the report that's in front of you? I'm thinking, is it?
Completely, yeah.
A question was asked and answered in relation to the report, and the question relates to the information that was raised in the question and provided in the answer.
So the amendment is simply asking that that be added to the original
Well,
resolution.
we'll deal with it as an amendment,
As an
and if
amendment.
it passes, then it'll be added to the
Look,
resolution.
I don't see anything telling me that it's unreasonable.
So you're making a resolution without complying with the LGA decision making.
Let's go, we'll just run the rest and go for it.
Mary's right, it's unlawful.
Just do it anyway. Take a risk, people.
All right, Mary, thank you for your advice. Obviously, councillors can decide whether they give weight to that advice or whether they're happy to write in any case, but you've provided the advice, thank you. So we'll allow the amendment.
Sorry, Andrew, can I just clarify then? So if it's inconsistent with the LGA, we can still proceed to make a decision on that?
But where did that didn't come from the legal advice?
No. What?
It came from an experienced general manager. Whose advice I'd take over mine.
So we should consider... Okay, please do. Please do.
Could I just venture a reconciliation between the two pieces of advice? If we were making a decision to retain or relocate the building, then what the General Manager has said is absolutely crystal clear. We would not have sufficient information to make that decision.
Correct.
We're simply writing in this resolution to express support for either the retention or relocation of the Ying building, recognising it's not our decision. So, and it may not be possible. So it's just expressing support, therefore. So it seems to me that people have enough information based on whether they feel supportive around the retention or relocation of the building. In terms of writing to express that support, we wouldn't have enough information to make a decision about whether we could retain or relocate
the
building.
retention of the building on site affects council's decisions and costs in the future, so it does affect it. So if that amendment was purely about relocation, then you would be absolutely, I feel you'd be right, but about the retention on the site, that changes it completely, because there is a cost and a whole change to the project.
Okay. All right, Yanni, on the back of what has been some pretty informal discussion, are you happy with the wording you've got there? Are you prepared to make a change? If you were to take retention out, I have a feeling it would get more support than if you left retention in, given the answer to the question that you already asked.
But
The thing is that we've set up an independent.
It's to-
We've set up an independent company to provide advice on this.
Yeah.
So if they came and gave us advice on retention, then that would be different
Well,
from the situation here.
Shall we ask for advice then?
No, because they would only come to us if they would have a reason to. If we express support for relocation of the Ing building, then that does meet that requirement. But you could say that
The board, so if I could just interject, the board have written clear, well-detailed information, 4 times is it, thank you, but in the last time, to Lynn's, exactly why it is that they require the site unhindered. So Tim's comments in terms of the council expressing a perspective at this point does have implications.
Yeah, which the amendment as it currently stands, but realising the wording that's on the screen is different than the wording that you put forward, Yanni, is support for relocation, not retention or relocation. It's entirely up to you what you put up as an amendment, but you've heard the comments in the room, and maybe you'll be reading the room as you decide what you want to put forward.
Can I just maybe you could expressing support for the energy building and options to
Retain it.
retain heritage, but that might be not on site but elsewhere. Support the building.
Yeah, options to retain it. There you go.
What do you want to do? Yanni, this is your amendment. What do you want to do?
Council Right to Lynn's expressing support for consideration of options to retain it. I thought what Sarah said was good. Then it leaves it open and, you know.
But that would be in complete, even if it was in complete conflict to the company that we've set up to provide us with the support to get on with it.
So would you consider, picking up Sarah's point, would you consider options to relocate or retain the heritage of?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's just like we haven't even approved the design, and I know this company that we've set up is going to come back to us at some stage with all the concepts. To me, it would just be a shame if it was demolished ahead of getting that information back. So,
all right. So to relocate the Ing building or retain its heritage is a better way of expressing it.
Sorry.
What's the point in having a company?
So what?
Do you not agree with this? Do you not agree with this going?
We haven't done that.
No, don't agree with having the company. Council should.
All right, Yanni, sorry, we're trying to wordsmith this to make it acceptable, but this is your amendment. Tell me what words you want.
Andrew, can I just I've just been advised that the issue around the Ning building is the subject of legal proceedings.
Oh, right.
And I think that should kill this stone dead.
So what you're saying is that this amendment should be ruled out of order because it's a matter which is already subject to legal proceedings?
Yes.
So the experienced general manager's advice at the very beginning, 20 minutes ago, was bad.
Well, that's different than the advice we received at that time, but on that basis, that leaves me with no option but to rule this out of
That's a
order.
little bit disrespectful to our legal advice.
All right, that leaves me with no option.
No, I haven't given any advice on contract or anything like that. It's purely based on what Mary's just told me.
Yeah, so we strike it out, ruled out of order as we were. Okay. So this has now been moved by Sam, seconded by Tim, that we receive the information in the update. Is there any debate? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so now I'll move that we resolve the, now that I move that we exclude the public for the reasons set out in the agenda. Do I have a seconder for that? James Daniels. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried.